Yeah. So. Okay, I want to continue and make sure I finish what I was talking about last week, but I can't do so without doing a quick chazara, good for all of us. So I'm going to go a little quickly. And Rabbi Phil, were you here last week? Okay, so you can follow fast. Okay. The Rambam says, and we're talking about the halacha of Kavana. What Kavana, this halacha, what Kavana do you have to have by tefillah? So the Rambam says in Parak Revi, halacha aleph, of Hilchos Tefillah, Chamisha dvar ma'akvin es ha-tefillah, that when you go to daven, there are 5 things that are ma'akiv the tefillah. Afal pisha yigia zmana, b'chiddush. Like you could think, okay, but I'm in a rush, right? But no, afal pisha yigia zmana, the zman tefillah is here, and I'm going to miss davening altogether if I start being makbid on these things. These are not chumras, the Rambam says, these are ma'akiv es ha-tefillah. Your tefillah is not ma'akiv es ha-tefillah. Simple taich means that I'm not, I didn't daven, it's ma'akiv, I didn't daven. It's like you can't have, like you have to have a lulav to do the mitzvah's lulav. If you don't have a lulav, it's ma'akiv. It's not, you could shake your hands, you could shake date trees, but it's ma'akiv. So what are the 5 things? Taras ha'yodayim, kisui ha'erva, taras makam atfili, you have to daven in the makam tahar, dvarim ha'choifzim oisai, which this morning as I was going over this Rambam again, I realized I probably mistranslated it. Dvarim ha'choifzim oso, I said things which distract you. But that's probably not what it means. It probably means chipazon, ha'choifzim oso, things that are rushing you. Like I got to catch a train. Am I correct? Or ha'choifzim oisai. Think about it for a second. It's a whole different idea. Chipazon. Like I'm rushed. The kavanas halev, and that's the wild card over here. Kavanas halev. Okay, you can wash your hands. You can be in the right place. You can not have to catch a train, and you have to have kavana. It's ma'akiv the tefillah. You have to have kavana. And here the Rambam goes through all the different cases of these chamisha dvarim until he gets to halacha tezvav. And here he explains kavanas halev ketzad. Kol tefillah she'ena b'kavana, comes the Rambam, he says, eino tefillah. If you daven without kavana, not that we know yet what kavana is, but if you daven without kavana, eino tefillah, it's not called a tefillah, v'mispalo b'lei kavana, chayzer mispalo b'kavana. And if you davened without kavana, you daven, I say I didn't have kavana, whatever kavana is, you have to daven again. So this I mentioned last week, the Kesef Mishnah says the Rambam, no, you have to daven again if you didn't have kavana. So the answer is he learned it from a Gemara. The Gemara says, it's not a Mefursha Gemara, but the Gemara says that Rabbi Yanai, you see here in the Kesef Mishnah, Rabbi Yanai, they were watching him once, he was a big gadol. They were watching him once and he davened and he stepped 3 steps out of Shemoneh Esrei and he davened again. So over there, the Gemara is handling a sugya of as to whether you can say Musaf b'yechidus. And Rabbi Yanai, we find a couple places in Shas David b'yechidus. So he davened b'yechidus, that they were watching him. They said, okay, here you go. You can say Musaf even b'yechidus. So comes Rabbi Yirmiyah, and he said, 2 generations later, comes Rabbi Yirmiyah, and he says that you don't know from Rabbi Yanai that you can say Musaf b'yechidus. Maybe the reason he davened, tzoli v'chazer tzoli, maybe the reason he davened and then he davened again was simply because he didn't have kavana the first time. So he davened again. The holy Rabbi Yanai didn't have kavana the first time. Comes the Rambam and he says, what's Rabbi Yirmiyah asking over here? Is that a reason to daven again? Kamash Malan, says the Rambam. Rambam learned the Gemara well. And the Rambam said, must be from Rabbi Yanai or from Rabbi Yirmiyah's kasha on Rabbi Yochanan, who was learning something from Rabbi Yanai that it has nothing to do with Musaf, it has to do with Kavana, but we see that there was a clear yisoid in the world that if you daven without Kavana, you have to daven again. Now it could be that Rabbi Yochanan didn't want to go there like that, that Rabbi Yanai is davening without Kavana, but okay, Rabbi Yirmiyah didn't mind. And Rabbi Yirmiyah said, all we can learn from here is that if the Rambam says what we can learn from the kasha, whether that was the pshat in Rabbi Yanai or not, what we can learn from the kasha is that if you daven b'lei kavana, you have to daven again, yes? So that's what the Rambam says. And therefore he says, v'mispal b'lei kavana, chayzer mispal b'kavana. And the Rambam spells this out. Matzadaita meshubeshes v'li by tarud. Let's say you're just not holding by davening. Li by tarud. Correct. Asr lo lispalel shetishyashev daita. You're in the middle of an argument. You're in the middle of something sometimes you stand up to daven. You say, "I'm not really holding my davening." Blah 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 blah. So says the Rambam, no, don't daven. Asr lo lispalel. It's asr to daven ad shetishyashev daita until you have clarity of thought. Lefichach haba min haderech. So example. You were traveling, v'hu ayef, you just came off the plane, o meitzar, or you're got into some kind of trouble, you're aggravated about something. Asr lo lispalel ad shetishyashev daita. Don't daven. Asr, not you don't have to daven, not daven anyway. Asr lo lispalel. This is a clear psak of the Rambam. Asr lo lispalel. Amru chachamim. The chacham said shloisha yamim ashiyanuach v'tizkar daita v'achach yispalel. So if you come back from a trip, so the Rambam says you should wait 3 days before you daven. Takes me longer, that's the truth. A couple weeks. So this explains why, when I say to somebody, "Oh, I haven't seen you in a long time," I say, "I was in America." And they say, "When did you come back?" 7 days ago. So the answer is that Remakman on the Rambam. You don't daven. Okay, so we're very we don't do this. We just daven, right? Daven in the airport. We daven on the plane. We daven on the street. We get out of the taxi. Shkia is coming. We daven on Kfishachad. Like we just daven.
Well, what is Chayal deciding in Gaza?
What's he supposed to do? Is he supposed to daven? Yeah. Right. According to this Rambam, he can't daven. The only thing with
how far do you go?
The only thing with the Chayalim is that maybe like they're davening with more Kavana than ever. So meaning like that's Gufa during the Kavana as opposed to Meitzar Loy or probably. That's another thing we don't do. And what I want to do here, Haminenus Filksar. I want to. Maybe this week, next week, I want to get back to the basics as to, why don't we just do what Chazal say? But so far, which is an interesting question. I always tell the story, I'll tell it again because it's the right time, but when I was a chiyuv, so I was passing through a city just changing planes, a city in Germany. It was, what's the big airport there? No. Okay, it doesn't make a difference. I was passing through this place, and Americans uncomfortable being in Germany altogether. But anyways, I was a chiyuv, so there was a bunch of people. So I got together a minyan, and I mincha, and I wanted to daven for the yamud. So I davened there in the place, daven in the yamud, and I had a minyan. And in the middle of Shemona Esrei, mamash in the middle of my Shemona Esrei, a guard, a security guy, German, came over to me and he said that you can't do this here. No davening here. Like I got the right country. So I just, I didn't understand the middle of Shemona Esrei, and you can't daven here. So I had no choice. Stopped in the middle of Shemona Esrei, really, and everybody walked away, and everybody davened. In other words, to them it was a security threat. People davening in the middle of the lobby there. But after mincha, an elder yid came over to me, an American, and he said to me, "Kach amru chachamenu zal, hamispalel baderech yispalel tefillah ksara, shema yafsiku b'yoivei drachim." Like, why don't you just listen to Chazal? So, truth is, I don't know the answer to that, but our minhag is not to listen to Chazal. Is it right? Is it? We'll go into the Christian Science monitor room to daven, but Chazal say daven tefillah ksara. That's what you should do. But okay. Yeah. Right. Then the Rambam says in Tez Zayin, let's go quickly because I don't want to get lost here. Keitzad hi Kavana. which I asked last week, is a different, same words but a different question than he asked in Tezvav. In Tezvav he said Kavanas Halev Ketzad. And here he said Ketzad Hiya Kavana. What's the difference?
Before it was, how do I have Kavana? What is considered Kavana to have? And now is what is it better? Earlier it was more technical. When am I Yotze, when am I not?
So earlier the Kavanas Halev Ketzad has to do with Yishuv Hadas.
He doesn't explain it earlier.
Doesn't explain. Well, he does say if you don't have Yishuv Hadas, you don't have Kavana. But here he gets, I don't know if it's more detail, but more Ketzad Hiya Kavana. I think what he means here is, okay, what am I supposed to do before I daven? Tachlis. Don't daven, before is a negative. Like if you're on a trip, don't daven. What am I supposed to do? I'm coming to shul, I'm good.
Now that my das is mitzvah, what should I be doing?
What am I supposed to be doing? Ketzad Hiya Kavana, you still have to have Kavana. She yifna libai, and this is what we all need to do. She yifna, or yipana maybe, libai mikol hamachshavos. You have to clear your mind. He lost me already. You have to clear your mind. V'yira atzmai ki'ilu hu oimed lifnei hashchina. Another madrega. Everybody comes to daven, clear your mind. Whatever's going on, clear it up. And envision yourself standing in front of the Shechina. And how do you do that? Lefichach, says the Rambam, like an eitzah tzarech leishem mat goy to matzvila. Sit a little bit. Don't just come in and chap. Sit a little bit. Kedei lechaven es libai. Lechaven es libai. V'acher kach yispalo benachas v'tachanunim. And then you can daven benachas v'tachanunim. So there's one din in the Rambam that you can't daven when you're tarud from the derech. That's called kavana. Kavanas Halev Ketzad. And here he's being mefarish. Remember, Halacha Aleph, 0.5, Kavanas Halev. And now he's saying, and what is the correct proactive thing to do? Imagine yourself standing in front of the Melech. And now let's say you didn't do that. Let's say you came to daven and you didn't do that. So he just said before, if you daven without kavana, you have to daven again. See the Rambam. Okay, so now he's teaching for us. He's saying that, and what do I mean? It means that I'm standing one more time. Yifna libai mikol hamachshavos. You have to get everything out of your mind. I'm angry at this one. I'm upset about that. I have to do this. I have to do that. You have to get it out of your mind. And I have to imagine myself standing in front of the Melech. So let's say you don't. Let's say you didn't. So you daven again according to the Rambam. Clear, right? Daven again. I want to say that what I didn't say last week, but I'm going to talk about today, is that if you turn more pages in the Rambam to Perek Yud, he says that in the Avos, first paragraph of Shemoneh Esrei, the Avos, so there for sure you have to have Kavana. So, which is a pliyat summa. He doesn't tell us, he doesn't limit this to the Avos. He's talking about here the whole Shemoneh Esrei. The other interesting thing about the Rambam here, would he change his mind? Only the Avos? The other thing is, one thing he doesn't say here is that you should think about what you're saying. Like, isn't that something? Pirush HaMilim. Like he's missing, it seems like you're reading this Rambam, Iker Chaser Min HaSefer. First thing you get to daven, everybody knows, is learn what you're saying. Take an art scroll, Iverteich, whatever you're comfortable with, but go to school, but learn what you're saying. Otherwise, what blah, 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 what are you saying? What are you doing? So, we have to hope that in a sophisticated crowd like ours, everybody knows what they're saying, more or less. Hopefully more. But you really have to take time to know what you're saying. But the Rambam doesn't bring this. He doesn't bring it at all.
This is before.
So what?
This is, you're about to start.
What are you reading? Just read that.
Ketzad Hiya Kavana. You're about to start. What do I do now? Clear my mind.
Clear your mind.
Clear my mind. I never understand what you're for. Go.
Okay, but he doesn't say the main thing. Oh, you're saying what you said last week. Because he's not talking about Shemoneh Esrei.
This is a preamble.
This is before. Hasidim Rishonim.
You're sitting down, clear your mind, do all these things.
And that's called Kavana and Tefillah. So you don't have to have Kavana and Tefillah. No, he's saying, said this last week also, that there was a good diuk, that all the things that you do, like Taras Yadayim, it's all things you do before you daven. So probably the Kavana is something you do before you daven. That's what you're saying, right?
When you're saying the word and understanding what you're saying, you're speaking to someone. So that's automatic.
No, so it's nice what you're saying.
In a way. You're speaking to someone. You're saying you're understanding the words and you're speaking to someone.
I get it, but I'm saying, let's say you didn't have one idea, one word of what you're saying. So then the Rambam says you don't have to daven again. You don't know. I don't know either. So we don't know. But what you're saying is interesting, that the Rambam is all talking about preamble. But then, like, as I say, Iker Chasam Reserve is missing the main point. The what?
Everything is falling, the needs of my mind should be part of it. That means I should take whatever's in my mind and make it into the field. That's the second person.
Well, it's a shtickle dilemma, because everything that's on my mind is why I'm came to shul to begin with. Gosh, I need a refuah shalem, I need some parnasa. Did I get it off your head? So.
The Avos is at the beginning. That's not me. That's not my the hemshech. After the Avos, I should really put into the field my issues.
Okay, let me here.
Yes and no. Didn't we learn in the Nefesh Chaim that you're supposed to let the words do the talking? In other words, the Chayim Sheikh necessarily goes.
Right.
So you think that, but if you learn then, if you think about it too much, you actually could be messing up.
You see, but all this discussion is changing the whole thing of what we do. Let me just throw in one idea that I didn't mention last week. Important Risha in the Shalom Shuvas Arashba, Kehillat Aleph, Siman Shin Mem Daled. I didn't mention last week because I was racking my brains to try to remember where it was. But the Rambam, then I had the great idea of looking on the internet, and I found it. The Rashba is doing something. Rashba's Shuvas are beautiful, by the way. They're skipped over in learning. The Rashba's Shuvas are beautiful, poetic, practical. And Shoalta, you asked this question, he says. Everyone starts like that. Kasafta, Shoalta. So the question is, it's Rashba's question. If I daven, so the Rambam told us yes, right? Said yes. And the Rashba's asking the question. But Nista Pakti Bazah, I have a big suffix in this, is the Rashba. Because I found Rabbeinu Yoina preceded him, that you do have to go back. So the Rabbeinu Yoina says you do have to go back. And he writes this in Igeres HaTshuva. Rabbeinu Yoina in Igeres HaTshuva. It's also mashma like that, he says, from the Gemara in Brachos. No, he doesn't mean the Gemara in Brachos that the Kesef Mishnah brings. He means the Gemara in Brachos, which says that he's going to say the Gemara in a second. Tzilas HaShachar. V'kashali. The Gemara in Brachos seems obvious that Rav Avira, I think, was davened again. Like, it's funny that the Kesef Mishnah has to bring this diuk in Rabbi Yanai. Kashali. So, Frek Rashba Kasha. It seems to be from my predecessors that you have to daven again. We paskin, the Shitas Harashba, by the way, the mitzvahs ain't tzrichas kavana. So if mitzvahs ain't tzrichas kavana, so why do you have to daven again? I did a mitzvah of tefillah, and I did it without kavana. So was it different than every other mitzvah? Sheilas Harashba. Something wrong with the question? That what? Say, speak it out. Well, so mitzvahs. So let's say like this. In other words, mitzvahs ein shrichas kavana. Hooray! I'm doing the mitzvah. I'm putting on my talis and I'm doing an atifa but I'm not any kavana. It's not. By the way, it's a suffix in Shulchan Aruch whether we pass mitzvahs tzrichas kavana, mitzvahs ein tzrichas kavana. The Rashba says mitzvahs ein tzrichas kavana. The Shitas Rashba the Shulchan Aruch brings. The Mishnah Berurah says that you have to have l'chol hapachas kavana lotzeis. It's like he makes a pshara based in Rishonim on the two shitas. So I put on my talus. So minimally I have to say, okay, I'm going to put on my talus. Like you can't be completely misasik. And you put on your talus and you make a bracha and mitzvah saying tzrichas kavana. I go to daven Shemona Esrei, or say Shema in Shemona Esrei. So I have to have kavana according to the Rabbi Yaacov. So the Rashba says mitzvah saying tzrichas kavana. So Rabari says, which is obvious, that okay, hani mili where it's a talus. But the talus, but at least I'm putting on a talus. But if you're davening without kavana, like I don't even. It's not even a talus. It's not. I'm missing the chafetz shel mitzvah. Is that what you're saying? Meaning, in one case I need a piece of cloth called a talus. In another place I need a lathe.
Which one's the left? No, I'm not like doctor now. I'm asking of the two acts of putting on the talus and going, which one is Kavana Saleh? The Rambam's view is in Kavana Saleh.
Yeah.
So you said
Kavana Saleh.
So the Mishnah Berurah, you said Mizmiyah shared this. It seems to be focusing on this Kavana
So probably, so I don't know, but he davened without kavana. His question is, Amispalav like kivein libai, sorry, lachser lispalav imlai. The Rambam was already poshet this. Rashba answers, I'm skipping here. Alma, klal gadol, tefillah b'lei kavana lav tefilahi. A tefillah b'lei kavana is not a tefillah at all. Hilka chafilu yispalav like even klal chayzer mispalav. So even if you'll say, so this is important for us. Like in other words, don't confuse your klalim. There's a klal, let's say, according to the Rashba, of mitzvah strichas kavana, but it has to be a mitzvah. So the mitzvah here being tefillah, and if you add tefillah b'lei kavana, it's not. It doesn't even go into the sugya of mitzvah strichas kavana or not strichas kavana. It's a different thing. Is it a tefillah? Is it not a tefillah? That's what the Rashba says. Hilka chafilu yispal b'lei kiven klal chayzer mispal. He says at the end, Afilu man domer ba'alma mitzvah saying strichas kavana, even if you're going to hold that it ain't strichas kavana like he holds, hacha gabe tefillah she siddur shevachav shel yoitzer hakol. Now that we're talking about being masader the shvachim of the yoitzer hakol, ubakashas rachamim lefanav moida. I just want to. What he's saying is kind of pasha, but it's good. He spells out that forget about the sugya for our purposes. Forget about the sugya of mitzvah strichas kavana and strichas kavana. Here we're talking about a different thing. What's the ma'aseh of tefillah? And the ma'aseh of tefillah requires a lathe. So therefore, he says he agrees that you have to daven again. He's just giving maybe a little more hesber than the Rambam, being mechalek from the regular halacha of mitzvah saying strichas kavana. Ain't strichas kavana, but here it has to be a ma'aseh tefillah. I'm just asking, according to this Rash, but he doesn't speak it out. What's he talking about? The whole Shemona Esrei, or just the avos, or what does he mean? Lo barur. You daven, and you didn't have kavana, but you don't like. Huh? That's what he says. Since you're giving, well, two things. No. Hachagabe tefillah shehi sidur shvachav shel yoitzer hakol yisparach ubakashas rachamim lefanav moida. So it's mashma to me. It means the whole Shemona Esrei.
You have to refer to the sidur shvachav, which is the first three, then the bakashas. It doesn't talk about the hoidah at the end, but not sure.
Doesn't talk about the hoidah.
It does sound like the build-up of the Shemona Esrei.
Yeah. So if we can learn, and it's not even a deal. L'chayra, he's talking about tachnunim. So if he's talking about the avos and the Shemona Esrei. Okay, so let's go further into the halacha.
I'm saying that anytime you need lathe, anytime lathe is in the mix, you need kavana.
Where else is this true? Could be Kabbalah Al Malchus Shemayim, like Kriya Shema. Right. Could be. It could be Haida also. You see, I don't know. I would think Haida is even more so.
Yeah.
That has to be believe. And yet, that's mashma. He doesn't say Haida.
Would Mishabur agree that there's also like a minimum, that is like at least you know you're davening? The same way he has a pshara by Lulav, would the Mishabur say there's a pshara by Tefillah as well?
So let's see the Mishabura. That's what I want to do. See the Mishabura. So first is I want to read this halacha again because I love this lashon of the Mechaber. Hamispalel, follow with me. Hamispalel tzarich sheyichaven beliboy peirush hamilos, something new. Peirush hamilos, the words shemaitzi b'svasa. Okay, that's a whole new idea. Think about what you're saying. Nobody said that. Yeah, I mean, not the Rashba, not the Rambam. No, nobody talked about it. So you're saying maybe because it's not talking about tefillah, but I'm doing what the Shulchan Aruch says. Hamispal tzarich sheyichaven beliboy. Uses that word yechaven beliboy. What? Peirush hamilah shemaitzi b'svasa v'yachshav kilu shchina kenegdai. It's already like the Rambam says, and you've got to consider like you're standing in front of the Shekhinah. V'yaser kol ha'machshavos hatardos ha'isai, says the Shulchan Aruch, you got to clear your mind. Ad shetishayer machshavtei v'kavanasai zaka b'tfilasai, until you have your machshava v'kavanasai zaka b'tfilasai. What do those words mean? Help me here. Ad shetishayer, be careful. You clear your mind. How clear does your mind have to be? Ad, he says a shir, ad shetishayer machshavtei v'kavanasai zaka b'tfilasai. So what he means by this is that I have to be able to be margish that I'm standing in front of the Shekhinah, and with nothing else going on in my mind at the same time. So what the Shulchan Aruch is machadash here, it's not just, okay, I'm standing in front of the Shekhinah. If you can get there, that seems like good. But the Shulchan Aruch says, no, you have to clear your mind, so I'm not also standing in front of the Shekhinah and also thinking about my kids or my coffee or my din Torah or my business. Like, in other words, it has to be, there's no multi-functioning allowed here.
Is that humanly possible?
Frank's good, I don't know.
All the guys who have EDD are laughing.
Everybody, I mean, I want to answer you, I hope that the answer is that with a lot of practice, it's possible. But I don't even know if we're practicing this. Meaning, I don't even know if this is a goal for most people. Because we're so happy that we just davened mincha that the Shulchan Aruch says it needs practice. Yeah. Like we don't do meditation per se. That's not part of it's not in the books. But whatever it takes, whatever it takes to get to a place where I have one machshava and one machshava only for the whole Shemona Esrei, it seems. But although he says, and this is besides for Peirush Hamilos. And at this point, I have to think, certainly if I was standing in front of a melech, I would be very careful how I'm talking. You agree, Philip, that he's not saying like you're saying, right? Because he's putting together the Kavanas Halev with Pirush Hamilos. Not here.
What was Machshava and Kavana?
Machshava v'kavanasei was my question. I think it'll become clear in a minute. We all know this Gemara. What we have to learn from this Gemara is now we have to take 3 hours for every tefillah, an hour before, an hour during, an hour after. But spited us. We kind of get alone. What does mispoited mean? Like Litboded is to meditate. That's what it means. Hayim mispoidedim umechavnim b'tfilasam ad. This is what they did. Ad shayim magiyim lispashtus hagashmius. How can you daven with Acha yamagiam lispashtus hagashmius, says the Shulchan Aruch, ulisgabrus koyach hasichli, acha yamagiam karav lamalas hanavur. Okay, so, and if not, daven again. I've got the main thing there. You see, like, we're very much used to multitasking are we not? I mean, in other words, of course, I'm walking down the street and I'm listening to a shiur and I'm thinking about something. We're and I'm careful where I'm walking and and I'm being polite to the people. There's a lot of things that are going on in our mind all at the same time. Not good for Shemona Esrei. Shemona Esrei, you have to stop, which makes sense. What Chazal say, the daven tefillah ksar, if you can't do this, because at least there you got a fighting chance. That's what they do. Shulchan Aruch says, okay, the Shulchan Aruch continues sort of in Kuf Beis, in Kuf Aleph, rather. And here the Shulchan Aruch says, well, before I get to this, let me just read this Bir Halacha one more time. Bir Halacha says that even though, according to many people, you have to daven again if you didn't have all these kavanas, so he says, Likuva rak ba'avos levad. The only place where it's really ma'akiv is in the avos. This is a big save by the Mishnah Berurah, which doesn't seem so pashut. I will show you. But that's what he says, only the avos, because you see that the only place you need kavana is really, really ma'akiv is in the avos. U'shar brachas rak l'chatchila. That's not what the Rambam says. The Rambam in Perek Daled says you have to have kavana throughout. Shulchan Aruch says throughout. If you skip in the Shulchan Aruch to Kuf Aleph, here the Shulchan Aruch says, "Ha-mispal tzarich shechavein b'chol habrachos, v'imeno yochel chavein b'cholam lefachos shechavein ba'avos." At least you should daven in avos. And here, that's pretty much where I left off last week. And here, follow me. I'm going to go fast here. Zakta Mishnah Berurah. Well, let's go one more line in the Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah, famous Ramah, the Ha'idna nowadays, meaning the Rambam and these Rishonim were in the 12th century, the 13th century, so somehow they had more kavanah in the 12th and 13th century. But now in the 21st century, or whatever he was, the 17th century, so now in the time of the Ramah, Ha'idna, ein chayzrin b'shvil chesron kavanah. We don't go back because of lack of kavana. Meaning, the Rambam is the Rambam, and the Rambam says you should daven again. And the Ramah, like in a huge statement, changed the halacha. And he says nowadays you don't go back because you don't have kavana. Why? Sha'af b'chazar karav hu shelo yechavein. Because who says the same thing's not going to happen again? Im kein lama yachzor. So why should you go back? So or don't daven altogether. So don't daven altogether. We don't have kavanah nowadays. So let me make 100% clear the translation of this Ramah. He doesn't say that you never can have kavanah. He doesn't say that he's saying. All he's saying is, because I hear this misquoted all the time. All he's saying is that right now I'm davening, and I step out of Shemona Esrei, and I say to myself, "Oh my gosh, I had no kavanah at all, like I was in some other place." So he says, don't go over it again, because probably whatever was bothering you the first time is bothering you now also. Like if you're in the middle of some kind of an aggravating fight or something, so it didn't go away. So you can do daven again and again and again and again. If there's some reason that you didn't have kavanah the first time, so try again tomorrow. He's not saying that a person can never have kavanah. Why would he change the whole history of Klal Yisrael? What he's saying is, like, if whatever was stirring me the first time, I couldn't clear my mind. And this happens often. I couldn't clear my mind. So probably you still can't clear your mind. So what does it bother him? Right, again, the answer is you get into bracha levatala. He's machmer the bracha levatala. So comes the Mishnah Berurah, and he says, Chasav achaye yodam. Nearly, Chayyodam writes, Kiven the mitzad adin, he's writing on the Rama. Kiven the mitzad adin tzarech lachzer lishpalo, really al pi halacha, you have to daven again, right? I'll cope on him, but you don't because you might make a bracha levatala, or you probably will make a bracha levatala. I'll cope on him. Im nisker koidem shamar baruch atah Hashem, which baruch atah Hashem? Magen Avram. So if you chop before you say the bracha, in other words, this happens probably to people once in a while. In other words, you say Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, Elokei Barban, I didn't have Kavana. So Chayyodam says, if you didn't say the bracha yet, so no shasha bracha levatala, so start from the beginning again. Sounds good. And you can get into that a few times until you get it right. Why not? So he says, I'll call upon him, Niskar Kodim Shamar Baruch Atah Hashem B'Seif HaBracha, Yachzer Loimer Melekei Avraham. Go over it again. Okay, Avraham, Melekei Yitzchak, Melekei Yaakov. Because you don't want to say the shame again. Okay, that's Mustavra. But now the question is, let's say I already said Magen Avram. So what do I do now? Keep going. Right. What am I supposed to do now? Now that the Chayyodam taught us, okay, if you didn't say Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avram, so go back again. Because Meikir Adin, you're really not Yotze. And the Ramah tells us if you're not Yotze, so you don't daven. If you're not Yotze, but even so, you don't daven again because you're not going to have Kavana. So what am I continuing for? What am I continuing for? This is the Mishnah Berurah's question, Bir Halacha. So Bir Halacha's question on the Chayyodam. It makes no sense. We're going to try to make sense in a minute, but this is Bir Halacha. L'chayra Kavanasai. L'chayra Kavanasai must mean, the Ramah must mean, Im siyam Shemona Esrei v'lo kiven ba'avos. You finish Shemona Esrei and I realized I didn't have Kavana in the Avos. I really didn't have Kavana. Avolim oimed eitzalat gibar b'nisker shalai kiven ba'avos. Remember, this Bir Halacha is going on the Ramah, not on the Chayyodam. Avolim oimed eitzalat gibor. So that means you already said Magen Avram, right? B'nisker shalai kiven ba'avos. Kiven the mitzad adin lo yotze b'zeh, says the Bir Halacha. Mitzad adin, so now you did nothing. You weren't yotze. I said avos without kavana. Lo yotze b'zeh. Heich noimer loy. How do we tell the guy? Sheyivarech oid bracha shelo yetze mehem. That's such an obvious question. Acher dechaser loy birchas avos. So, in other words, if I miss the one place where I really have to have Kavana in order to make the Shemona Esrei into a Shemona Esrei, I have to have Kavana on the Avos, and now for sure I know I didn't have Kavana on the Avos, so now I'm standing here, and what am I supposed to do? I didn't have Kavana on the Avos. If I didn't make the Bracha Magen Avram, so Beseder, try it again. But if I made the Bracha Magen Avram, so just go weiter. What am I going weiter? I'm back to the Ramah's problem of Bracha Levatel. That's the Mishnah Berurah's question. What am I supposed to do? Tell him, okay, now just keep making brachas levatala. How could it be? That's what I would have said. Avol, however, Mishnah Berurah machni himself from the Chayyodam, which he quoted in the Mishnah Berurah, yes. Avol midivrei Chayyodam mashma de'eino chayzer. Once you say the bracha, you say the bracha. So Mishnah Berurah gives us eitzah, which I have never heard or seen anybody do. Mishnah Berurah says the right thing to do is if you realize you didn't have kavana by avos and you're already past the Magen Avram part of it, so the right thing to do is yosin nearly eitzah acheres b'ofen zeh. Just be quiet. Stop davening. Ever hear anybody do this? I mean, how would we know what people do? But I can't imagine the people. Shlo yomer oidato klal, elamai yamtin ala shayach tzibur. Wait for the chazan. Sheyomer birchas avos, and when he says birchas avos, I think we have to assume that he's having kavana. Maybe not. I don't know. When he says birchas avos, you have in lotzes.
Probably catch 22 because the cousin can never start because he doesn't mean it. Everyone's waiting, never has a meaning.
And now the Mishnah is giving you a tip that don't stay with the shliach tzibur the whole time, just for the avos. And once he starts saying Ata Gibor, Yaschel Batzma, then daven already yourself. Why? Because nowadays nobody's yotze with the shliach tzibur, unless you're an Einer Baki, not all nowadays, always. Mashen came ba'avos, for some reason, Kivin Sheni Yochel Levarech Oisa Ba'atzmai. Mishnah Berurah, you can't you're stuck because it'll be a bracha of Atola. So now you're like an Einer Baki. So once you're like an Einer Baki, you have like that din of an Einer Baki, so you can be Yotze, but the rest of it, you are Baki. Why?
No. Shas is mecham for this person. It's cham for himself. Now he's not cham for the person.
Right.
How does it help him? Shas is
I think. Mishnah Berurah is a Mishnah Berurah. It seems like a funny eitzah, but here I want to show you the ikr is. I think before it's not like that. This one, the Chaim Brisker. So the part you don't have here, I'm going to read to you. He's talking about the Rambam, and watch carefully what happens here between the Chafetz Chaim and Reb Chaim Brisker. The Rambam says, he quotes, we know this Rambam, Hey dvar makinas hatfila, afal pisha giya zmana, and then v'chulei, we skip to Yudalad, to Tesvav, Kavanas Halev, Ketzad, Kol Tefillah She'eina B'Kavana, and feel like we went to Rambam. Says Reb Chaim, Mistimas Loshen HaRambam, like one of the things, if you ever learn in Brisk, so one of the things, like the first things that you get taught is be quiet and let the Rambam speak. Lashon of the Brisker Rav. Was the Rambam read? Because we read away, and it's probably one of the most important, permitted to speak about this on a maven, but probably one of the most important yesodus of limud and brisk is to just read the text without everything you've ever learned since your bar mitzvah interfering with the text. And this is a bad habit we all have, that as soon as somebody says something, you stop listening and you're already thinking about what you want to say about that or what you know about that and how to respond to it. And so read the Rambam, let the Rambam speak. That was Brisker Rav says, let them read. So says the Reb Chaim, and this is a perfect example of this, Mistimas Lashon Rambam Mavur, that didn't Kavana, well, Kol HaTfilah. I asked this question at the beginning. That the Rambam says that you have to have Kavana and Tfilah, otherwise davening again. He didn't say anything about the Avos. It's only in Parak Yud. In Parak Daled, when he talks about that it's Ma'akev, he's talking about the whole Tfilah, it's Ma'akev. And there's no other way to learn this Rambam except to say that if at any point you were not Mechaven, then you have to go back to the beginning. There's no other way to learn the Rambam. And then all of a sudden in Parak Yud, he says, but in the Avos, you really have to have Kavana. So he asks Reb Chaim, clear, Mistimaz Lashon Rambam Avur that didn't Kavana al Kol HaTfilah. Shekol HaTfilah Kavana Ma'akeves, like the Rambam says. Because, but it's shver, Masha Pasuk Rambam Parak Yud. In Parak Yud, the Rambam says, Mishi Yispalel v'leikiven es liba yachzer v'yispalel b'kavana. So Kehillat repeats this halacha. And then the Rambam adds the caveat, v'im kiven es liba b'bracha rishayna shuv einoi tzarech. So it's a steer in the Rambam. Before you lahedja, so there it's clear that kavana ain't a ma'akev is rak b'bracha rishayna. So which way is it? B'tzarechim. That's Reb Chaim's question. Good question. Like let's uncomplicate our brains right now. And the Rambam says in Parak Daled that you have to have Kavana in the whole Tefillah, and in Parak Yud he says it again. You have to have Kavana in the whole Tefillah, And but at least in the avos, at least one. At least one. Zuck the Rambam, and I copy this down for you. V'nira loimer, he says what we have to say is, and this is Kavald, Trei gavni kavanas yesh b'tefillah. There's two things that we can call kavana here. Two types of kavana. Ha'achas kavana shel pirush hadvar. So the first thing is, what are the words that I'm saying? Pirush hadvar. V'yisoida hudin kavana. What does those words mean, David? The Yisoida who didn't kavana. The first kavana is that you have to think of what do the words mean. The Yisoida who didn't kavana. What does that mean?
The beginning of the words is Kavana. Kavana means baseline. Kavana, what you're saying.
Yisoida means baseline.
Like the foundation.
Yisodach, the mapikeh. Yisodach, and it's Yisod.
The Yisoida of what?
All the Pirush Hadvar.
Pirush Hadvarim is a din of kavana. Listen, it's so beautiful. V'shenis, the second thing is, you'll see it's obvious what he means. Sheyechavein, the second kavana is, shu oimed b'tfilah lifnei Hashem. So there's two things going on right now. One of them is that I have to think about the words that I'm saying. V'yisoida who didn't kavana. That's what kavana means. I'm thinking about the words I'm saying. But the other thing is, sheyechavein shu oimed b'tfilah lifnei Hashem, that I'm standing in front of Hashem. Kimavur b'dvarav, parak daled sham, and that's what he means in the first Rambam. Umahi kavana, the Rambam says, sheyifna asli by mikol hamachshavos, v'yiratzna ki lo oimed lifnei Hashchina. That's a second. So there's two things going on in my brain right now. One is kavana of the words, and the other is kavana, what am I doing? And that's this. Nira, and it seems, let Reb Chaim speak to you. V'nira, the kavana zu, ain't kavana. Standing in front of Hashem, the fact that I'm standing in front of Hashem, that's not called having kavana. Well, wrong word. Rak shume etzem maisa atzvila, which is pretty much what you were mechabed to. That's davening. Like, in other words, if you're not standing in front of Hashem, you're not in business. It's not like this rule, that rule. You're not. This is what you're doing. You're coming and you're standing in front of Hashem. Says Reb Chaim, b'mein libay podnoi. You're not doing. You're doing something else. Maybe you're reading psalms, or you're saying things, speaking in tongues. I don't know what you're doing, but you're not davening. And he's saying this from a lamdisha point of view, because there's a big difference in halacha all over Shas between doing something without kavana and being misasek. Doing something without kavana, whatever it means you have to have the kavana, and maybe that's where the sugya of mitzvah strichas kavana, mitzvah saint strichas kavana come in. But there's a different thing, a different level. Okay, I didn't have kavana, but I'm not misasek. Misasek means that I didn't even do, like, in order to do a maisa of any sort, an avera, a mitzvah, in order to do something which is called a maisa, I got to be present somewhat in that situation. So if somebody pushes me in front of somebody and somehow that kills somebody, God forbid. So you used my body, but you didn't use me. You just used my body. So I'm misasek. And the Gemara speaks about misasek b'chalav v'arayis, and the Gemara speaks about all kinds of cases of tachvay lebeis habliya. They took matzah and you pushed it into his throat. Did he do a mitzvah or not? I don't want to eat matzah. You forced the matzah down his throat. So tachvay lebeis habliya. So that's called, the Gemara says that's probably called misasek. Gemara is a shayla about it. Hareyu b'chlal misasek the ein zadin maisa. Va'al kain, and therefore, now watch this carefully, ma'keves kavana zu b'chol hatzvil. That's the whole thing. There is no such thing as one moment of prayer where I'm not praying. There's no such thing as I'm davening Shemona Esrei and I'm not oimed lifnei hamelach. All right, that's what you're doing. You're oimed lifnei hamelach. not that I'm doing something wrong or I'm not doing it correctly or I don't have the right technique. I'm not davening if I'm not omed lifnei hamelech. The b'makom shaya misasek, all the things that you said as a misasek, didn't kol yispal kol kilu dolag milay seila. Like you skipped the words. What happened to Rafeinu Hashem and Rafei? I skipped the words. So saying, so this is a big chiddush. So saying words without any, not even knowing you're saying, like you daven mincha, did I daven mincha? Like you don't remember. So anytime you're davening or talking in general, and you're not even part of that conversation, so it's like you didn't talk. So everything is ma'akiv.
Did you say Hashem's name? Is it when you say Hashem's name?
It's a different question. Like, are you allowed to do that? One second. Your sudden life. Where you are mechavein, it's called mechavein, umakir maisa, v'yodea shu oimed v'tfila. I have to know that I'm davening Eloshei Yodea Pirush Hadvar. Maybe I don't know what I'm saying. Shazed din mesuyim rak b'tzvila levad. Hoysafas din kavana. That's a toisafa in kavana that you have to also know what you're saying. But that I'm standing in front of Hashem, says Reb Chaim, that's a maisa of tefillah. If I'm not standing in front of Hashem, it's not a maisa of tefillah. You're what he calls a misasik.
What if someone has Persian Milos but doesn't realize he's saying Hashem?
Oh, so very interesting. So it comes out, first of all, why not?
You're so into what does the word mean, you forget it means something.
No, I think it means something else.
Not to me, not to so, but
What are you saying?
You're saying, Rafaino, please give me your refuah shalema.
We don't.
Oh, that's the question. So I explained last week, and this is, I believe, Emes Lamitai, that why is the avos more important than everything else? What? Because otherwise, not connecting. Why is the avos more important than everything else? It's identification. Like the first thing you have to know is dalif nemiat oimed. If I don't have kavanah in the avos, I could be saying Rafeinu with all the kavanah in the world, and Baruch Aleinu, and I could be crying. I could really be into it, even Pirush Hamilos. But who are you davening to? They did the same thing when they davened Sat Avodah Zarah. I give you an example. Let's say this is not a political example. I'm just going to make it easier to understand. Let's say you go to a kever, and you're spilling your heart out. You're crying, and you're fasting, and you're there all day, and you're standing in the rain. You're davening at the kever. So if you could be doing a huge avera, or you could be doing a wonderful thing. But if your kavana is not this dalif nemi ato oimed, that I'm standing in front of Hashem asking Hashem, what's this kever doing here? I don't know. But I'm davening in front of Hashem, then you're just Doyer Shalom Mason. So you're asking, how's it possible to say the words without having kavanah? Very pashut. Saying the words like it's some kind of a school or something. So the first thing you have to do is have kavanah at the avos, because the avos are saying, the first thing you're saying is, who are my davening to? The answer, the one that was chosen, the one and only one that was chosen by Avraham, by Yitzchak, by Yaakov. That's who we say. The Gemara says, David HaMelech says, well, what about me? Also, Ein Tzarech, the Avram Avinu, the Echad Haya Avram, if he chose Hashem, that's who I'm davening for. Do I understand everything about Hashem? I don't know how to understand everything about Hashem, but I know that whatever he was davening for, that's what I'm investing in. That's who I'm standing in front. Whatever Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov did. So, of course, you have to have kavanah at the avos. Otherwise, you don't have the dalif nemi ato oimed at all, no matter how much pirush hamilah we have. That's why the avos is so important. But I want to say this: that the Mishnah Berurah said that all this kavanah we're talking about back in Sadaches is only talking about until the avos. After that, like breathe easy a little bit. And Reb Chaim is saying, no. This is a big chumrah. That is a brisker chumrah. That might be true by the Pirush Hamilim. I'll say even more. Could be even there you don't have to, it's not ma'akiv. But the dalif nemiat to omed, of course that's ma'akiv the entire tefillah. So you have a clear machlekes Chafetz Chaim and Reb Chaim Brisker. Understand this?
Chafetz comes to saving the apples.
Hold on for a second, just to make sure. Like, what does the Mishnah Berurah hold and what does Reb Chaim hold?
Because these are what he's saying, so we have to proper in a case, the whole long thing, I know what I'm saying. So it's like, how?
Let's before that, I just want to get the Mishnah Berurah says clearly in the Bir Halacha that listen, all this, don't get too excited because all this Kavana you have to have, and if not, you have to go back. And the Rambam, well, he's talking about the Rambam. So everything you have to have is only until the Avos. Don't get too excited. You don't have Kavana, and as long as you said the Avos correctly, you're okay.
Even if you don't understand the words.
Reb Chaim comes along and says, "Ma pitom." You're not okay, even if you don't understand the words. Reb Chaim is introducing here a kavana that the Mishnah Berurah is not talking about. Hani mili, I mean, I feel like they're even arguing because it comes out lamaisa. Hani mili, that the avos, after the avos, you don't have to have kavana in the Pirush Hamilim. And that's what it's talking about in Kuf Aleph, and that's what the Rambam's talking about in Parak Yud. But here in Parak Daled, where he says Keitzad Hiya Kavana, here he's not talking about the Pirush Hamilim. He doesn't mention a word about Pirush Hamilim. All he's talking about is the basic Kavana of Dalif Nemiyat Oimed, which is Ma'akiv Shemon Esrei from beginning to end. End of Arkazah, which the Rashba says also, except he deletes the part of Hoidah for whatever reason. But maybe that. But Dalif Nemiyat Oimed. If you'll ask a posek, a Talmud Chacham, we'll say, what's the Iker Kavana that's Ma'akev? Dalif Nemeyat Oimed. So Reb Chaim is very good in endorsing the, the Baal Shem Tov's guy who was whistling in Shul, or the Barditchever guy who was saying, Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled, hey, fine, as long as you know before whom you stand. And then everything is fine. I mean, of course you want to understand the words of the Tefillah. Masha'en Kain, somebody who says every single word, I think even the Avos, and doesn't have the Dalif Nemiyat Omed, even the Avos, especially, even if you said it, you understood every word of Avos. I understand what I'm saying. Okay, Abraham, okay, but you don't have the Dalif Nemiyat Omed. You're missing in the Ma'aseh Tefillah, says Reb Chaim. So you have to daven again. So what is the Ramah saying?
I once heard a shot that learning what Rav Chaim might be saying, what Ramah is saying, is that in order to get out of the tefillah, the moment you start davening, the fact that you, at least at one point at the beginning of davening, realize you're in front of the Almighty, the rest of the davening is included, and you no longer miss asir.
Ramah doesn't say that.
That's magic.
In other words, if you
that would be.
daven the ovos and you have.
But you're saying Baruch Levatala. The Rambam says it's kilo. The Reb Chaim says kilo. You skip the words. People skip the words anyway. But by the way, I just while I'm here, I said what I wanted to say. But it's words are very important. Words are very important. Like not to mumble the words. I'm just saying I don't like to be like a nunnik here for my seat, but especially if you're davening yourself, how do I know? But if a shliach tzibur gets up and mumbles words or cuts off words, so then he didn't say the words. The Reishis Chachma says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says the Reishis Chachma, you say a mumbled word, Hashem takes your tefillin and throws it to the ground. Hashem, the Reishis Chachma. Every word is important. So there's this habit of. I don't want to give examples because then you'll start getting offended. But it's very important to if you don't know how to say the words, practice Ivra. It's extremely important to say the words, and then maskana. It's not, in other words, not just the phonetics, and it sounds almost right. You have to say the words, and then you have to know what the words mean. But when we're standing in front of davening, if you're standing before Shemona Esrei, you're about to daven Shemona Esrei. Here's what we learned here today: that if nothing else, so stop and think. Dalif Nemiyat Oimed. This is. I'm standing in front of Hashem right now, and then keep that in mind for the next 2-3 minutes. You could be like a Gerach Chassid. The Gerach Chassidim daven very quickly because they say you can't keep that Kavana for more than a minute. Don't say daven quickly. More important than the Pirush Hamilim. That's the shit.
And they mumble the words.
Yeah. So, Right. But the opposite side of that is to also, so here's our Kabbalah today. Let's just be normal. So normal, like if I'm talking to you, I'm not mumbling the words, and I'm not hello, like I don't do that either. I just talk like a normal person. So when you talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Dalif Nemiyato, I mean, that's a beautiful thing which I think everybody can achieve, and for that you have to clear your mind. Doesn't work. It has to be a full kavana. You have to clear your mind. And that's the kavana, which is ma'akeva, says Reb Chaim, in the whole thing. Avos, that's a different story. That's a story in Pirush HaMilim. That's a different thing. And there, the Rambam doesn't say that's a different kind of a halacha. That's halacha, Pirush HaMilim. It's a different halacha altogether. Okay. Thank you for listening.